It's been a bit since my last Main Abyss video, but we finally have a new chapter and I wanted to post a few of my thoughts. Unfortunately, I won't be able to have as many animatic stuff as usual. I've just been working on a ton of other projects. I might be posting some stuff about them soon. But yeah, so a very quick refresher on how I analyze Made in Abyss. So usually the way I look at and take apart Made in Abyss is in terms of structure. And by this I mean how Tsukushi writes the story and splitting up the arcs and seeing what the themes of each arc is and what they're going to be in the future. And I see each arc as having two major themes. So each one has one unique primary theme that typically compares two elements like curiosity and fear, or love and sacrifice, value and souls, that kind of stuff. And then fleshes them out to give us a new outlook on the entire series. And then there are the value themes that explore one of the 5 levels of value, how it's relevant to the series and relevant to the characters, and it always forces Rico to learn kind of the mindset of that value in order to proceed. I split each of the arcs into 3 main categories. I call them day arcs, night arcs, and gates. Day arcs gain a new primary theme, and they usually focus a lot more on world building stuff. And night arcs gain a new value level and are a lot more character focused. The main giveaway of what an arc is, the night arcs always have, at least so far, have always had a white whistle as a main component of it. Then there are the gates, which aren't really arcs. Sometimes they're a chapter or so, sometimes they're a couple pages, but they're just events that require the metaphorical key that's gained from the previous night arc, which is the thing that Rico needs to learn, mixed with some more physical abilities or items or whatever that they need to get. As an example, I consider Orth in Layer 1 to be one arc. This is the first day arc. It introduces the theme of curiosity and fear, and it builds up the basics of the world building, whereas Layer 2, the first night arc, introduces the theme of Shi, which is the first level of value, and focuses a lot on Ozen. And then Layer 3 would be the first gate. It required the cooperation and determination that Rico and Reg learned from Ozen, as well as the determination of Shi. So using this method, we can figure out the themes of our current arc. As the current arc is a night arc, which takes the theme of value and souls from the previous day arc, then it adds a new value of Gutsu. Gutsu is the crystallization of value, which refines the accumulated values from Ku into one focused wish, meaning that the many goals that Rico currently has will become more focused and determined than how they are currently. When Srajo first met Rico and asked her oh, what are your goals? And Rico is oh, I have all of these things. I want to meet my mom. I want to figure out what's up with Rag, all of this stuff. By the end of this arc, that will be refined into one singular goal. Something that I noticed that's a big difference between day and night arcs is in their primary themes. They tend to focus on one element over the other and just have undertones of the second one. For example, Orth and Layer 1 focus a lot on the curiosity of the abyss, and there's some elements of fear, but once we get to Layer 2, the fear and the curiosity switch around. So there's a little bit of that curiosity, but heavily focused on the fear and the danger that the abyss produces. Yeah, Nanachi focuses a lot more on love, while Bondrewd focuses more on sacrifice. The village arc focuses more on value, while this arc seems to be focusing more on souls. Typically, the night arcs would focus on the darker side of the theme. This arc seems to be kind of diverging from that, but it's very likely that we'll end up finding something about souls that ends up making them a lot darker. Even though there was a lot of like darkness around Value in the village, it was ultimately like a self-improving force. Souls, on the other hand, we typically associate with like good stuff. It's very possible that there's going to be a lot of darkness. Like one path that I can kind of see this going down, Reg and the two other robots, I'll get to that more later, but I think there might be something in there that adds to the darkness of souls and will probably create the like moral conundrum, or at least one of the moral dilemmas of this arc. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the actual chapter. The main topics that I want to cover are the Juso, the release, the white whistles, and a bit of extra miscellaneous stuff. I'm really interested by the Juso. Like, at a very surface level, they remind me a bit of the Omen from Elden Ring. In the way that, like, they're both curse-born people who've been exiled by their societies. In one of my previous videos, I ended up grouping them with the different forms of Narahate. And while I don't think that's entirely wrong, there's definitely a lot more going on with them. They share a lot of different traits with the Narahate variations. They have animalistic qualities like the Alter Narahate. They're exiles like the villagers. And they seem to have been abyssal since birth, like with how Fapata is. The biggest thing that differentiates them so far is that their form isn't due to sacrifice to our knowledge. And from the sounds of it, it's more so the other way around, because of, at least with one of the translations I saw, implied that the Juso were killed at birth. I don't know how accurate that is, or like sacrificed at birth. My initial guess is that they might be connected to the birthday death disease, mostly in the way that they could also be caused by the abyss reaching up into Orth and affecting everyone there. If they are connected to the curse, though, I wonder if they're exclusive to Orth's level of the curse, or if they've been around for like over the 2,000 year cycle. I'm curious to see what abilities they have also. Nishigora is unnaturally strong, but it's hard to tell if that's exclusive to her, or if Juso are inherently superhuman, or if it's like a relic thing. Very unclear. Hopefully, some point soon we'll see some of the other Hail Hex members fight, and we can get some more insight on that. It's pretty interesting to see that Srajo wasn't also a Juso. She just has like extreme abyssal twirls from the looks of it. She's definitely connected to them in some way though. All of the squads of the White Whistles end up having like some connection to their leader. The subterranean bandits are all reformed criminals who really connect with Ozen's like outcast personality and being kind of roguish, but having like an underlying accepting, in air quotes, accepting and lax nature. The Umberhands connect with Bondrewd's determination to help others no matter the cost, and with the sense of purpose that he grants them. And Hail Hex all being Juso and Taboo raises the question of how they're all connected. There's also like the value levels of each White Whistle. Although we don't know too much about Gutsu to say for sure how Srajo embodies it, Hail Hex definitely has the spirit of Gutsu. Nisha was pretty surprised when Reg wasn't hit by the curse, which to me kind of implies that Juso just aren't immune to the 6th layer curse. And the conversation between Bondrewd and Srajo also points to their mission in the 6th layer being just as dangerous as for anyone else, which is a level of determination that Bondrewd lacks. Comparing Gutsu to Ku is that accumulation of values that we covered in the village arc, but it's very unfocused. It hasn't reached that level of crystallization that happens in Gutsu. Similar to like how Rico is right now, Bondrewd is extremely determined, but he has about as much focus as I do if I don't take my ADHD meds. anytime something new comes up, he's like, ooh, I want to investigate this. He just cannot help it. But that lack of focus is what keeps him from being able to really pass beyond the absolute boundary for longer than a brief curiosity-driven outing. Srajo and Hail Hex, on the other hand, are like so hyper-focused on their goal of fighting the Shrine Maiden that they've thrown themselves into like the depths of the 6th layer and set up at least 5 like fully furnished bases down there with probably no backup plan. It doesn't seem like they have a way to get back, which honestly, I could make an entire video about how all of the white whistles are just like extremely neurodivergent and embody neurodiversity in like a really interesting way. I have more to say about Hail Hex, but first I want to talk about the release for a bit. Well, so far we've only seen Nishigora use it. It seems that the other two, Juso and Shirumi and Mine, are also able to use it. Srajo mentions taking up a stance to use the release in the Bondrewd fight, and also tells Shirumi and Mine to take a wave blocking stance later on. It's really interesting seeing a non-artifact use it. Seeing Reg use it back in the village made sense because we were told by Ozen that white whistles unlock the power of relics, but it looks like she wasn't really telling us everything, which doesn't surprise me. That's like most of what we learned from Ozen was half-truths. My two best guesses are either that white whistles can release any abyssal entity, or more likely that they release the soul. I assume that it'll be the second one, since souls are the major theme of this arc, and it's hard to tell if that has implications or not for other relics. It's possible that the unlocking of relics and the release aren't really related, and we were just misdirected during the village arc. Regardless, the release has a lot of weird implications for the series going forward. One big complaint that I hear sometimes is that some of the main cast members, mostly Nanachi, just don't really feel like they do a whole lot anymore. While I don't agree with this, I do think that their lack of higher capabilities kind of does hold them back sometimes. It could be an interesting fix to have release Nanachi. Something important to note is that the release isn't just a basic power-up. Like, Reg and Nishigora both become stronger, but in very different ways. Like, Reg becomes super fast, whereas Nishigora becomes a lot more sturdy, I guess. Even though they both have the same buff, they show it in different ways. And yeah, like if other party members are able to use the release, then it's possible that they'll also have more elaborate abilities as well. Either way, it seems like mastering the release will be the key that Team Rico needs to learn to be able to like bypass the next gate. I'm curious if there are higher levels of it. I talked about this in, I think, the Fapata video of the color gold compared to the color white, and how white usually represents the Haku, and gold seems to be something above the value level chart entirely. I wonder if we'll get something further than this later down the line, but we'll see. Back to Hail Hex. There was a lot of interesting information in this chapter about all of the members. The unnamed Birdman was characterized pretty well here. While he was intimidating and kind of scary in the previous chapter, he seems to be pretty sincere and a lot more cautious, I guess, and really balances out the more chaotic natures of Hail Hex pretty well. Also, I've heard other people mentioning that his silhouette matches up with the images of Srajo that we've seen previously, and that was made a lot more obvious due to the fact that he was carrying the same coffin that Srajo was always shown with. And from what we've seen, it feels pretty in character for Srajo to send someone else to take her place to socialize. She doesn't seem to be the kind of person who would like to go into Orth and do Orth things. It's most likely that she is content in living exclusively in the Abyss, because it's like Ozen and Bondrewd definitely tend to stay in the Abyss more than other people, but I wouldn't be surprised if Strajo just never leaves the Abyss. That also explains her drastic redesign, and kind of cements that we probably won't see her dressing up like a crow. Although we might see the Birdman dressing up in full Plague Doctor garb. That does bring up a question that I have, though, about the design symbolism, because the designs of the White Whistles tend to be symbolism dense. She probably has a more complicated design that we haven't seen yet, but the Plague Doctor definitely isn't it. It's going to be something new. I'm definitely curious to see what that like symbolism is, because typically the White Whistle design symbolism tends to explain their entire personality. Okay, the next member raises a lot of questions. In the first scene, we see another Hail Hex member that we don't know the current whereabouts of. I'm curious how big Hail Hex will actually be. I'm kind of guessing that this will be all of the members, and that at around this time is probably when Nishigoro was chasing after Tepaste and Cravali. There's a lot to be seen, especially like where this member is, because it seems like this is the only member who is missing. It's possible that we'll see more, but time will tell. Okay, now on to the big ones, Shirumi and Mine. It looks like my suspicions about them were right. They seem to be related in some way to the Abads, and they're possessed by the souls of two dead people that we saw from some of the extra pages in the last arc. They were pretty surprised when they saw Reg, so there are definitely differences between Reg and these two, although the specifics of those are pretty unclear. There have been theories about Reg having a soul of a dead human or multiple dead humans, which honestly seems a lot more likely now than ever. We'll definitely be learning more about Reg than we've known previously. Now, just some miscellaneous thoughts that I had reading through the chapter. Seeing a lot of things that Tsukushi mentioned in the fan event from, 2021, I think. That was super cool. Seeing more Bondrude, more fleshed out White Whistle relationships, confirmation of more Ozen abilities all in one chapter was pretty nice. If you missed the fan event, Mickle Pickle has a video on it. It summarizes it pretty well. There's a bunch of miscellaneous info you can also find on the wiki that catalogs a lot of like the questions that were asked and whatnot, but I don't know. It was cool. I hope they do another one sometime. We finally see a female Umbra Hand, as well as have a name for the white coats, which seems to be Shrouds, which we heard back in Side Story 4, and having a bit more context for that is nice. Plus, knowing that Bondrude was in a weakened state during his arc was pretty fun. Like, this chapter in general kind of raised the power level of the White Whistles quite a bit. Also, it makes sense that the embodiment of curiosity and the embodiment of mystery don't really like each other that much. I hope we see more stuff fleshed out about these two other than just this one scene, because there's a very interesting dynamic. I'm curious about how Srajo's White Whistle works. Is the form change thing just like a weird cosmetic thing, or is it like resonating with itself or releasing itself? Also, do like the different, it seems like there's two different whistle sounds, or at least they like shift sounds, I guess. There's a lot of questions. Either way, I do hope that we learn more about the whistles, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding them and a lot of stuff that could be built up around them. Overall, very excited to see where this arc goes. Having confirmation that my theory on the themes was correct was also super nice, and I really can't wait to see where Tsukushi will surprise me in this arc. Around when I recorded this, like a day or two ago, Tsukushi was streaming again of the next chapter, so we definitely won't have to wait as long as we did for this chapter. Although I am definitely doubting that we will be getting a volume this month or this year. I hope that what's going to happen is we're just going to get like a delayed date. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, whatever, rest of however long until the next chapter comes out. Either way, I will see you all probably soon-ish. And especially with this video being wrapped up, that opens me up a lot for working a lot more heavily on my main project. And I will probably be posting some stuff about that relatively soon-ish. But yeah, definitely excited for that. Bye.